Alright, this is my movie commentary on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So I'm gonna explain my different thought process of when I first watched the movie, and then 10 years later when I watched it again. So the movie came out in the year 2000. At that time, I had practiced martial arts for 2 years, and I was about around 19 years old. I watched the movie in the movie theater, and at that time I had a different mind state. I was immature. Now I'm more mature. So I watched it just last night, and that's 10 years later, so it's 2010 right now. So I'm gonna explain my different thoughts back then, and then my thoughts right now, 10 years later. So back in 2000, I was a lot more ego, more competitive, more prideful, just younger. Didn't have the understanding that I have now. When I first watched the movie, I hated it. I thought it was just garbage compared to, like Bruce Lee and Jet Li movies. I was mainly focused all on the fights, on the martial arts scenes. I wasn't even paying attention at all to the storyline, to the emotions or anything. I was just concentrated on the fights alone. And I immediately disregarded the talent and skill of the fight scenes because of my views of the unrealistic flying and then jumping high in the sky and fighting in the trees. I just thought it was just too fake. I just kept thinking, this is not real. People will never be able to fly. And this is just, dancing. They're not even hitting each other for real. So my mind was just all focused on that. And I hated it. But yet, the movie was very popular. It won so many awards, and some of the people that I went with enjoyed it. The people in the cinema were cheering. They loved the fight scenes. And I didn't understand why everybody liked the movie, but then I hated it. So I was just looking at the fight scenes, and that was it. Nothing more. So now, 10 years later, and mind, this was before I was exposed to the philosophy of the martial arts. It wasn't until 2002 was I exposed to the philosophy of the martial arts. So this movie came out in 2000, so my state of being did not transform. I wasn't enlightened until 2002, so this was before my enlightenment, before being exposed to the wisdom of the East. Okay, so now 2010, 10 years later, I watch it again, and I take my time to read, the subtitles and understand the story behind the movie. And now, when I see the movie, it's a beautiful movie. I appreciate the fight scenes, the martial arts scenes. I appreciate the storyline, the meaning. Back then in 2000, I knew nothing about love. I wasn't in any serious relationship. I was never in any serious relationship at that time or before that time. So I had no understanding of love. I didn't appreciate the story of the movie that it was speaking about love. But now, 10 years later, I see the beautiful story and how it speaks about love. And I see that as such a important foundation to the movie. And then the martial art just enhances the beauty of the movie. So I see the martial arts as an addition, a supplement to the real beauty of the movie. The fight scenes I really appreciated. I'm not thinking how I was before. I understand why they were able to fly. Before I didn't understand. Now it's because they were studying a book that gave them like secret powers, and that was how they were able to fly. And all movies are fantasy. I see that. So anything can happen in the movie. They can fly. They just took it to another level of fantasy. And every movie is a fantasy. I see that now. So there's no such thing as what is more real than what's not. Because it is all a fantasy. It is all unreal. Everything we see on TV is not real. Everything is a fantasy. Even the competition fights that we think is real, it's not. It is a fantasy game that we created because we are sick of the reality. So we wish to see other people play games of fantasy. All sports are fantasy. We develop these rules so we could play a game and we could watch others play in a fantasy land. So this flying in the movie is a fantasy as much as any other fantasy that we see on TV. So I appreciate the skill and the talent. It is martial arts, true martial arts. They are dancing in beauty. There's violence, a feeling of violence in the dance. But they perfect the dance so well that they make the violence look very beautiful because there's an element of peace in that violence. So I could really see the difference between martial art portrayed in that movie and just pure violence of what I may see in some competition fighting and in other movies and in reality. There's a big difference between martial art and pure violence. Martial art is beautiful. Pure violence is not. It is ugly. So I see much beauty in the movie. And when they speak about love, because I've experienced love, and I am experiencing love, I deeply understand that part of the movie. And it is a very beautiful thing. And that is the most significant thing that that gives me great joy in the movie. Is the storyline, not the martial art, but the storyline is what appeals to me the most. The martial art is just added supplement. So when you combine violence with love, it becomes a very beautiful thing, and it can be very peaceful. And that is what I see martial art to be. And this movie really gives you a feeling of what real martial art is.